Here are 3 options for new English name sets for the characters: granddaughter Emily, daughter, in-law Sarah, son David, grandmother Margaret Thompson, ex-husband Michael, granddaughter Sophia, daughter, in-law Rebecca, son James, grandmother Patricia Hayes, ex-husband Robert, granddaughter Olivia, daughter, in-law Amanda, son Thomas, grandmother Susan Wright, ex-husband Daniel. I'll pick the first option and use it throughout. Granddaughter Emily, daughter, in-law Sarah, son David, grandmother Margaret Thompson, ex-husband Michael. As I was heading back from collecting my little granddaughter from her classroom that afternoon, the 7-year-old clutched my fingers with a surprising firmness for someone so small. "Come on, Grandma, we have to move quickly. Let's find a quiet spot in the bathroom over there." She tugged me urgently toward one of the cubicles and snapped the lock shut behind us. I leaned down, concern creasing my brow, and murmured, "What's all this about, darling?" She pressed a finger to her lips, urging silence. "Shh, don't make a sound. See for yourself, Grandma." She dropped to her knees and peered out through the narrow space beneath the door. I followed her lead, my eyes straining to make sense of what she was so fixated on, and in that moment, a wave of dread washed over me, freezing me in place. But hold on just a second before I dive deeper into this. Have you hit that subscribe button yet? And drop a note in the comments letting us know your corner of the world. It's always thrilling to see how our tales connect with folks from everywhere. It was during the golden hour in Miami, with the sun dipping low and casting a warm glow over everything, when my 7-year-old granddaughter Emily and I strolled home from her school. I'd treated her to a strawberry-flavored candy on a stick, its vibrant pink hue reminding me of the blooming hibiscus flowers lining the paths in the nearby gardens. Emily was savoring it slowly, her pure, joyful grin lighting up my soul like nothing else could. Yet, as we passed by a narrow side street that wound toward the lively South Beach neighborhood, the mood shifted in an instant. Emily halted so suddenly that the candy slipped from her grasp, landing on the pavement and dissolving into a sticky, rosy puddle against the gray concrete. My heart skipped a beat, and I knelt down beside her, my voice soft with worry. "Emily, honey, what's the matter? Are you feeling okay?" She stayed silent, her wide eyes locked on something unseen just over my shoulder. Her cheeks drained of color, her mouth formed a tight line, and before I could piece it together, she grabbed my hand with a vise-like grip, her tiny nails pressing into my palm. "Grandma, we need to hurry!" Her words came out shaky, almost like a desperate plea. There wasn't a chance to probe further as Emily yanked me forward with a burst of energy that belied her age. I nearly tripped trying to match her pace, my pulse racing wildly. We darted across the bustling road, the honks and chatter of passers-by blurring into background noise. Emily led us straight to a public washroom nearby, but she bypassed the regular areas and headed for a forgotten door at the far end. A storage room for cleaning supplies. The lock clicked ominously as we slipped inside. The cramped space amplified every breath, the sharp scent of bleach stinging my nostrils, and shadows swallowed us whole except for a faint sliver of light sneaking under the door. Emily trembled against me, her frame seeking shelter in my embrace as she clamped her hands over her mouth to muffle any whimpers. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling the frantic beat of her heart echo mine. "Emily, sweetheart, talk to me. What's got you so frightened?" I kept my tone even, though a knot of anxiety twisted in my gut. She didn't respond at first, just extended a quivering finger toward the door. "There, look closely, Grandma." Her whisper was fragile, laced with terror, as if uttering it might summon the very thing she feared. I lowered myself and squinted through the gap. At first, all I saw were scuffed tiles and indistinct shapes, but then a pair of vivid crimson stilettos came into view, gleaming like fresh cherries against the drab surroundings. They advanced methodically, each step resounding with a sharp clack that hammered at my nerves. My breath caught. I knew those shoes. They belonged to Sarah, my daughter-in-law, the exact pair she'd sported at my son David's recent birthday celebration. Emily buried her face in my skirt, her body stiff with fright like a cornered creature. From our vantage, I watched the shoes pause at the first cubicle. A soft bang as the door swung open, then shut, followed by the next, and the one after. The pattern was deliberate, predatory, like someone methodically flushing out their quarry. My stomach churned. I couldn't fathom the reason, but Emily's wide-eyed panic and those unmistakable heels screamed that this was no accident. Then, a voice pierced the air, honeyed yet bone-chilling. "Emily, darling, is that you in here?" It was Sarah's timbre, one I'd heard countless times, summoning Emily for meals, chatting amiably with patrons at our family bakery, whispering affections to David. Emily flinched deeper into me, clinging as if to vanish entirely. I smoothed her hair, attempting reassurance, but my own hands shook uncontrollably. The footsteps drew nearer, halting just outside our hiding spot. The shadow of those heels eclipsed the light strip, plunging us into deeper gloom. I held my breath, lungs burning, the world suspended in that heavy quiet. Abruptly, a shrill ringtone shattered the tension. Sarah grumbled irritably under her breath. The clacking resumed, receding toward the exit until it faded completely. Still, I didn't exhale fully, paranoia whispering it might be a ruse. Emily remained glued to me, her shivers unrelenting. In that fraught aftermath, memories flooded back, pulling me into the origins of this nightmare. My name is Margaret Thompson, 60, 2 years young, a widow who's made her home in the vibrant chaos of Miami. The salty ocean breeze and the comforting aroma of fresh, baked goods have been the soundtrack to my days for as long as I can remember. Our little spot, Seaside Delights Bakery, nestled in the colorful Art Deco quarter, isn't merely a job, it's the core of my existence. I rise with the stars still twinkling, my calloused hands diving into dough, shaping croissants and loaves that draw in locals and tourists alike. This place is my legacy, where I single-handedly raised my only child, David, after losing my husband to a fierce ocean storm nearly 30 years back. David grew up gentle and thoughtful, never one for the rowdy beach crowds. Instead, he'd linger in the bakery, stacking shelves or tinkering with the ancient mixer while the other kids chased waves. Then Sarah Jenkins breezed into our world like a fresh gust off the Atlantic. She started as a frequent visitor, a budding architect fresh from Charlotte. With her sleek auburn hair in a neat bun and eyes that sparkled like sunlight on waves, she'd flash a grin and declare, "Mrs. Thompson, your pastries are unbeatable around here." I'd chuckle modestly, but her words warmed me inside out. She had this knack for making you feel truly noticed, and I couldn't miss how her gaze lingered on David. He, ever the introvert, started perking up, chuckling more freely, grooming with extra care on days she might drop by. I'd catch him fussing with his collar in the back mirror, and I'd know love was blooming. Within a year, they tied the knot on the sandy shore, a modest affair filled with heartfelt joy. I stood there amid the crashing surf and happy toasts, tears of pure delight streaming down. Finally my boy had his match, and our circle felt whole. Sarah brought along Emily, her 7-year-old from her prior marriage. The girl's father, Michael, had perished in a mishap. She'd mentioned it briefly once, and I respected her privacy. Emily was a vision with her bright eyes and soft waves in her hair. On our first meeting, she shyly offered a sketch of a vibrant tulip. "For you, Grandma," she said, blushing adorably. It melted me instantly, and from then on, she was my own flesh and blood, always with a hidden treat in my apron to coax her smiles. At the outset, our shared life felt idyllic. Sarah dove into homemaking with gusto, whipping up hearty casseroles that perfumed our upstairs apartment above the bakery. She spruced up the place, new drapes fluttering in the breeze, potted ferns on the ledge, turning our cluttered kitchen into a sunny haven. But one day, as I handed Emily a warm roll fresh from the oven, Sarah intercepted it from the child's grasp, swapping it for a neatly arranged fruit platter. "Sweets aren't ideal for her right now, Mom," she explained gently yet resolutely. Emily dipped her chin, her eyes flicking to me apologetically. That moment lingered, and I began noticing Emily's watchful demeanor around her mother. Not the easy affection I'd expected, but a cautious vigilance, like treading on eggshells. During a family supper one evening, Emily knocked over her juice cup by accident, the liquid spilling across the tablecloth. She blanched, fumbling to mop it up with napkin scraps. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she stuttered, voice quaking. Sarah didn't raise her tone, she merely smiled serenely. "No harm done, sweetie." Yet Emily tidied in hushed tension, as if bracing for repercussions. Another time, I crafted a simple cloth bunny for her, complete with button eyes. Her face lit up as she cuddled it close. "It's wonderful, Grandma!" But days later, while tidying her space, I spotted it stashed beneath her bed, concealed like a forbidden treasure. My unease deepened into a persistent shadow one quiet afternoon when I returned early for a forgotten scarf. Climbing the stairs softly to avoid disturbing anyone, I overheard Sarah's tone from Emily's room, sharp and unyielding. "What have I warned you about? Never deceive me. I see it all." Gone was the usual warmth, this was raw, commanding. I paused, pulse thundering, then eased the door ajar with feigned nonchalance. "Back already," I announced, my words wavering. Sarah pivoted swiftly, her composed smile snapping into place like a well-rehearsed act. "Oh, you're home early, Mom." Emily and I were just inventing tales together, but Emily shrank back, her pleading glance begging me to linger. I forced a nod, yet inwardly, I sensed the facade cracking. Something lurked beneath Sarah's polished exterior. Now, in the dim confines of that storage room, after Sarah's heels had echoed away, I lingered another couple of minutes, ears attuned to the faintest hint of return. Beyond, only the rhythmic crash of distant waves and vendors hawking chilled drinks filtered through. No more steps, no saccharine calls. I cracked the door cautiously, a beam of light slicing in. The washroom stood vacant. Scooping Emily into my arms, her limbs limp with exhaustion, we emerged into the open air, the briny scent a balm after the chemical haze. I anticipated relief, but Emily's renewed shudders dashed that. Guiding her to a weathered bench, beneath a shady palm overlooking the beach, I fetched a cool water from a cart nearby and pressed it into her hands. "Sip this, love, then share what's weighing on you." She gripped the bottle but didn't drink, shaking her head and curling inward. I settled beside her, a gentle hand on her back. "You're safe with me, Emily. Whatever it is, you can let it out." Silence stretched, her eyes brimming, fixed on her sandy sneakers. Then, the floodgates burst. She hurled herself into my hold, sobs racking her frame, dampening my shirt. "I'm terrified, Grandma!" "Mom. Mom's always watching me." Those words sliced through me like shards. I enveloped her, battling the fury surging within. "Emily, what exactly does she do that frightens you?" I coaxed, steadying my voice. She drew a ragged breath, her story tumbling out in halting bursts. "It's not just picking me up at school. Sometimes she's at the diner opposite, peeking. Or she quizzes my pal Tommy on what I snacked on or who I played with. I try to keep secrets, but she figures it out every time." I absorbed her words, chest tightening. She went on, voice cracking further. "Last week, Tommy mentioned a kind lady chatting him up about me, and his description matched Mom perfectly. Her green top and those bright shoes." Emily paused, burrowing closer. Mom warned that if I spilled to anyone, even Dad David or you, she'd be heartbroken and we'd have to move far away. Just us. A chill gripped me. I vowed fiercely, I won't allow that, darling. But questions swirled. What shadows haunted Sarah? Why this iron grip on Emily? On our trek back to the bakery, I kept Emily's hand firmly in mine, her fingers chilled despite the lingering warmth. I scanned every vehicle, especially silver sedans like Sarah's usual ride. Each revving motor or shifting silhouette jolted me. Miami's sunsets, once a canvas of serenity in fairy hues, now loomed as omens. Change brewed on the horizon. That evening, with Emily tucked in, I awaited David's return from his delivery route to a seaside inn. He entered warily but with a content spark, kicking off his dusty boots and sinking into the couch. Busy day, Mom. Folks can't get enough of our pies. I mustered a smile, knowing silence wasn't an option. David, we need to discuss something important. He glanced up, intrigued. I inhaled deeply and recounted the ordeal. Emily's frantic pull to the storage room, her petrified stare, Sarah's crimson heels methodically searching, and Emily's whispered fears of constant surveillance and threats of relocation. David's face shifted from worry to skepticism, ending in mild irritation. Mom, you're reading too much into it. Sarah's just protective after losing Michael. She's paranoid about anything happening to Emily. His dismissal stung like ice. But she was quaking, dropped her treat in sheer panic. That's beyond normal worry. Just then, the bedroom door creaked open. Sarah emerged in soft lavender sleepwear, her hair cascading freely. She stood wordless, eyes pooling, clearly having overheard. My insides twisted. How long had she lingered? Her gaze held no fury, only glistening sorrow that disarmed me momentarily. She stepped to David, voice quivering. I'm sorry if I alarmed her, Mom. Head bowed, fingers twisted. Since Michael, terror grips me, fear of failing as a parent of another loss. She met my eyes, raw vulnerability shining. I just aimed to get it right. Her fragility sowed doubt. For a heartbeat I wavered, but Emily's huddled form in that dark room resurfaced, stealing me. Yet David had already sided, drawing her close. It's all right, dear. To me, a subtle rebuke, Mom. Sarah means well for Emily. A week later, over morning coffee and toast, Sarah casually mentioned engaging a firm for home security upgrades in the bakery and our living quarters. For safety against intruders, keeping us all secure, she said with a measured warmth. I assented quietly, but unease festered. While dusting the display cases one day, I spotted a discreet lens tucked in the lounge corner, aimed at our gathering spot. Another lurked in the corridor, where Emily and I shared games. Their subtle glow felt like unblinking sentinels. Sarah's oversight grew insidious. She unveiled a polished journal on the dining table, pages filled with precise script. Our household planner, to streamline and bond us more. It detailed every routine, my market runs, David's routes, Emily's art lessons. Even my siesta slots and oven checks were logged. Sarah, isn't this overkill? I ventured. She beamed. Oh, just efficiency, Mom. Clarity for everyone. One day delayed by a jammed register, we arrived home 10 minutes late. Sarah waited at the threshold, arms folded, smile intact but eyes probing. All well, Mom. I phoned the school. They said you were overdue. I worried. I explained the glitch calmly, but her scrutiny dissected my response. Emily cowered behind me, mute. Our haven morphed into a scripted performance, Sarah directing every cue. I noted her rituals, polishing handles to erase smudges, aligning pantry items meticulously. What once seemed admirable now menaced, a veiled reminder to toe the line. Late one night, around 2 a.m, the quiet neighborhood stirred only with ocean whispers and the lazy whir of our overhead fan. Sleep evaded me, haunted by Emily's dread, Sarah's veneered grins, and those watchful cameras. Frustrated, I rose, padding barefoot to fetch water downstairs. The corridor lay moonlit, shadows dancing. Nearing the bathroom, a crash jolted me, sharp, intentional. Dim light seeped under the door, accompanied by ragged breaths. I crept closer, easing it open a sliver. Sarah faced the vanity mirror, her silhouette elongated under harsh fluorescence. Shattered glass littered the basin, crimson droplets from her palms staining the white. She ignored the cut, transfixed by her reflection, murmuring hoarsely, "It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I warned you it wasn't on purpose." Her form rocked, gripped by some inner storm. I froze, heart slamming. Her words sharpened, he tumbled on his own. Slipped right there. I only shoved his arm aside. Ice coursed through me. Who was? Michael's image flashed, the accident report. Terror and questions collided. Unable to hold back, I whispered, "Sarah, who do you mean?" She whirled, terror flashing before morphing to a strained smile. "Mom, you startled me. Just a bad dream, that's all." She bandaged hastily, brushing past with repeated assurances, "Only a nightmare." But her tone betrayed conviction, not confusion, a desperate bid to bury truth. That encounter sealed my resolve. Inaction was betrayal. Dawn broke as I brewed coffee, feigning normalcy when David and Sarah descended. I announced a trip to aid an ailing relative in a hamlet near Tampa, likely returning after dark. Sarah nodded graciously. "Safe travels, Mom. Call if needed." David barely glanced from his paper. Instead, I sought refuge in a quaint bistro in the old town, cobblestones and flowering vines offering sanctuary from prying eyes. There, I rendezvoused with Harold Jenkins, my late husband's confidant, a former Charlotte detective now retired. His weathered features held sharp insight as I poured out the saga: Emily's flight, Sarah's pursuit, the midnight confession. I slipped him funds for discretion, tasking him to probe Sarah Jenkins and Michael. Lingering in an adjacent park, feigning interest in a novel, my phone buzzed hours later. Harold's grave update found him, Michael Hayes. Past 2 years back in suburban Charlotte. Report household mishap, stair fall, swift end. He texted coordinates with caution, tread lightly, Margaret. Anomalies abound. The weight pressed. What horrors hid in those steps? Sarah's echoed, a fell looped relentlessly. Boarding a bus to Charlotte, landscapes shifted from coastal palms to rolling fields. I gripped my satchel, mind racing with Michael's enigma, Sarah's sparse mentions clashing with her nocturnal anguish. Emily's fears amplified the urgency. Arriving, the address revealed a cozy bungalow, now home to a lively family, kids' giggles echoing. Deflated, I nearly departed when a neighbor, an elderly lady in a faded sundress tending roses, noticed me, introducing myself as a remote kin seeking family lore. She, Mrs. Evelyn, invited me for iced tea on her porch. After pleasantries, she opened up. Sarah. Lovely appearance, but always on edge. Her spouse Michael was kind-hearted, always sharing treats with the local children, ever smiling. From afar, ideal tidy home, Emily pristine, Sarah micromanaging, but thin walls betrayed quarrels. Sarah fixated on flawless parenting, dictating Emily's meals, outfits, playmates. I once spied her loitering near the playground, observing unblinkingly. Mrs. Evelyn hushed, glancing about. The fatal evening, thunderous row audible blocks away. Michael bellowed he was done, called her unstable, vowing divorce and sole custody for Emily's sake. My grip tightened on the glass. He'd consulted my nephew, an attorney, on proving her unfit, fearing rash actions. Post shouts, a resounding thud, then eerie quiet. Morning brought cops, accidental tumble, but no one bought it dear. Sarah's post-incident stare chilled souls, yet fear silenced tongues. Her revelation iced my veins amid the warm day. Thanking her, hands unsteady, I boarded the return bus, scenery blurring as pieces interlocked. Mrs. Evelyn's tale, Sarah's whispers, Emily's terror painting a grim portrait. Back in Miami at dusk, I entered to Sarah narrating a bedtime tale to Emily on the sofa, lamplight casting a facade of harmony. Emily nestled close, absorbed. Sarah glanced up, beaming. Home safe, Mom. How's your relative? That grin, once inviting, now unnerved, flawless yet frigid. I muttered affirmatives. Waiting till Emily slumbered and David wrapped work, I cornered him in the kitchen amid ledger stacks. Our sacred spot, where he'd scribbled homework, learned baking secrets, now dim-lit. I latched the door firmly. David, this can't wait. He looked expectant. I unveiled Michael's intent for separation. Custody fears over Sarah's stability, the explosive fight, thud, silence, and neighborhood suspicions. David's shock morphed to denial. Mom, that's hearsay from busybodies. You know gossip twists facts. I pressed. But that bathroom episode. She muttered fell, like justifying a falsehood. Don't you see? Conviction wavered him. He slumped, whispering denials. But the door swung. Sarah, water glass in hand, tears streaming. How much overheard? Enough, her gaze screamed. You side with her too. Think I'm a murderer. The glass shattered, liquid pooling. Sobs racked her, no trust, not even from you. David. She crumpled, he rushed to console. Of course I believe you, love. I stood sidelined, an outsider in my domain, guiding her away. Sarah's parting glare iced pure venom, a wordless declaration of enmity. From dawn, lines drew. Sarah barred my Emily access. I'll handle school runs now, eases your load with the shop. Protest rose, but David's wary plea silenced me. Emily's door stayed shut, glimpses were fleeting, her demeanor subdued. Meals turned tense, David's forced chatter on quirky clients or headlines masking the rift. Our exchanges, dagger stares. Sarah's eyes held no kin warmth, only adversarial chill, viewing me as peril to her constructed realm. Past midnight, a rustle roused me. Ears pricked Sarah's urgent murmur. Quick, Emily, grab your jacket. Adventure time, like storybook heroines. Emily's retort, no, I want to stay with Grandma and Dad. Let me go, her wail pierced. Bolting barefoot, hallway shadows loomed. Front door gaped, night breeze invading. From the balcony, under lamplight, Sarah urged Emily into David's delivery truck, engine idling. Emily fought, cries cut by slamming door. Tires screeched, taillights vanishing. Stunned, I pounded David's door. Wake up. Sarah's taken Emily in your truck. Groggy, he bolted upright, grasping horror. What? Where? I relayed, panic ignited. Phone in hand, he tracked via appy red blip northward. We piled into my car, racing airport bound. En route, he alerted authorities on abduction. They'll seal routes, he relayed shakily. But waiting wasn't us. Highway stretched black, headlights piercing. Sea roared beside. David gripped wheel, silent, eyes haunted. Near an hour, blip halted seaside. Police converged, beams revealing empty truck, doors ajar. Ahead on sand, Sarah clutching Emily shoreward. Emily quivered, struggling. Sarah wailed at lights, stay back! Won't lose my girl! Not maternal shield, desperate snare. Emily's tears glistened, cops advanced. Megaphone plea, release her, ma'am. Let's talk. Sarah retreated, gripping tighter. You don't get it. She's my everything. An officer, gentle-voiced woman, approached unarmed. I see your love, but you're terrifying her. See her fear, words pierced. Sarah's hold slackened. Emily fled to me, sobbing, Grandma, so scared. Sarah deflated, officer securing her. David murmured her name, shattered. Emily safe, yet family fractured. Post-incident, Sarah entered Tampa Mental Health Center via court and David's accord. Emily returned home. Bakery hushed, bread scents persisted, but joy dimmed. David toiled endlessly, dough his solace. One day, a call nurse from center. Mrs. Thompson, Sarah's progressing, requests you and David. I froze, cloth and fist. Visit, part resisted, but curiosity won. Drive Snake Hills to serene facility, gardens belying turmoil. Hand in David's trembling, we entered sunlit lounge. Sarah by window, altered, hair unkempt, gaze distant. David spoke, we're here. She turned, eyes sorrowful, not hostile. Sit, please. Quiet reigned, wind whispering. Then, haltingly, orphanage doorstep. Mom abandoned me after Dad's rant. You don't deserve motherhood. Heart aching, I listened. Orphan life feigned joy to fit perpetual abandonment dread. Smiles became armor. Meeting Michael older, stable, offered family dream. But cracks showed, he unearthed past, recoiled at control over Emily. Divorce threat, you're unfit, like dad's words. Triggered rage. I pushed in struggle, he fell. Panic, faked accident. Police bought it, fresh start beckoned. But fear lingered, losing Emily. Sobs punctuated. David knelt, embracing no abandonment here. I'm sorry for blindness. I beheld not monster but scarred soul behind perfection veil. Months on, Sarah shifted to distant rehab. Healing's long road, hope flickers. Miami life resumed, bakery bustled, aromas anchoring. Emily's giggles echoed anew. Afternoon counterside, I guided her sugar, dusting on treats via heart stencil. See, grandma, magic, I beamed perfect treasure. David tallied nearby, glancing fondly. Worry lines easing though ring remained. Emily paused. Will mom return? I wiped flower soft. Yes, love. She's learning peace. Like you with puzzles. Needs time. She nodded, hugging someday, perhaps. Evening stroll beachward, sunset painting waves. Sand cool, I skipped stones, murmuring, release past to cherish now. Bakery lights beckoned. Family flawed yet enduring. Invisible scars from lost control urges. Teach, perfection masks agony. Sarah no evil, but past trapped, love malformed. Life persists, heed loved ones timely. Not judgment, but embrace dissolving fears. This tale alters identities, locations for privacy. Not condemnation, but reflection prompt. Silent maternal struggles abound. In my shoes, would silence preserve harmony? Or confront for truth? Share thoughts, stories illuminate. God bless, courage guides brighter tomorrows. Final note, 2 fave channels below. Bound to captivate. To expand this story naturally, let's delve deeper into the everyday moments that built my suspicions, making the tension feel more lived in and real. For instance, there were those quiet mornings at the bakery before the rush hit. I'd be up at 4, the world still dark outside, kneading dough on the floured counter while the oven preheated with its familiar hum. David would join me soon after, rubbing sleep from his eyes, and we'd work in companionable silence, shaping baguettes and muffins. Sarah, when she first moved in, would sometimes come down early too, wrapping an apron around her waist and helping with the frosting on cupcakes. Her touch was precise, almost artistic. She'd pipe delicate swirls that looked like they belonged in a magazine. At first, I admired it. It brought a polish to our humble offerings. But as time passed, I noticed how she'd redo my work if it didn't meet her standards. "Oh, Mom, let me just even this out," she'd say with that sweet smile, but her eyes would flick over the uneven edges like they offended her. It was small, but it chipped away at the warmth we'd shared. Then there were the family outings we tried to make a habit of, like our weekend picnics at the park near the beach. We'd pack a basket with sandwiches from the bakery, roast beef on fresh rolls, some cheese and fruit, and spread out a blanket under the palms. Emily would run around chasing butterflies or building sandcastles if we ventured closer to the shore, her laughter like music. David would relax, leaning back with a book or tossing a frisbee. Sarah, though, always seemed on alert. She'd scan the surroundings constantly, her body tense even as she unpacked the food. "Is that man over there watching us?" she'd murmur once, pointing to a jogger far off. I'd reassure her it was nothing, but she'd pull Emily closer, insisting she stay within arm's reach. "No wandering off, sweetie. Stay where I can see you." Emily's face would fall a bit, her play curtailed, and I'd feel a pang. One time, during a particularly sunny afternoon, Emily begged to join some other kids flying kites. Sarah hesitated, then relented, but only after walking over herself to introduce Emily and chat with the parents. From the blanket, I watched her, posture straight, questions probing. "How old are your children? Do they go to the local school?" It felt less like friendliness and more like an interrogation. When she returned, she whispered to David, "Just making sure they're safe, people." He nodded, but I caught the subtle furrow in his brow. School days added layers to my growing concerns. Before everything escalated, I'd often walk Emily to her classroom, holding her hand as we chatted about her favorite subjects. Art, where she loved painting colorful scenes, or recess, where she'd swing high on the playground. The teachers adored her. Mrs. Larson once pulled me aside to say how imaginative Emily was, always drawing families with big houses and happy pets. But Sarah started inserting herself more. She'd call the school mid-morning sometimes, just to check in, as she put it. Did Emily eat her snack? Was she participating in group activities? The office staff mentioned it casually to me one day when I picked her up early for a dentist appointment. "Your daughter. In-laws so involved," they said with a chuckle. "It's sweet." But to me it rang alarm bells. Why the constant need to know? Emily began mentioning it too, in little ways. Mom asked what we learned today before I even got home. She'd say, puzzled, "How does she know already?" I'd brush it off with a hug, but inside, the puzzle pieces were accumulating. Dinners became another battleground of subtlety. We'd gather around the wooden table in our apartment, the one my husband had carved years ago, its surface worn smooth from countless meals. Sarah cooked wonderfully, roasted chicken with herbs from the market, steamed veggies arranged just so on the plates. But portion control was her mantra. "Emily, that's enough carbs for one day. Try more greens," she'd say, sliding the bread basket away. If Emily reached for seconds, Sarah's eyebrow would arch. "Are you really hungry, or just eating out of habit?" Emily would shrink back, pushing her food around. I tried intervening once, sliding a biscuit her way with a wink. "A little treat won't hurt." Sarah's smile tightened. Mom, consistency is key for her health. David would change the subject, talking about a new recipe he wanted to try at the bakery, but the air thickened with unspoken tension. After one such meal, when Emily had barely touched her plate, I found her in her room later, stomach growling. I sneaked her a cookie from my stash, and she devoured it gratefully. "Don't tell Mom," she whispered, eyes wide. That plea haunted me. Flashbacks to my own life intertwined with these moments, making the parallels stark. I remembered raising David alone after the storm took my husband. Those long nights worrying if I was enough, if the bakery could sustain us. But I never controlled. I let David explore, make mistakes, like the time he burned a whole batch of cookies, trying to experiment with spices. We laughed about it, turned it into a lesson. Sarah's approach felt worlds apart, suffocating rather than nurturing. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, wondering about her past. She rarely spoke of Michael, but once over tea, she let slip he was ambitious, always working late. "An accident at home," she'd said, voice flat. I didn't press then, but now, with Emily's fears, I regretted it. Adding to the expansion, let's explore more scenes at the bakery with customers, showing how Sarah's presence changed the dynamic. Regulars like old Mr. Patel, who'd come for his daily Danish and a chat about the weather, started commenting. "Your new family addition is quite the organizer," he'd say with a twinkle. Sarah would rearrange the display cases mid-morning, insisting on symmetry. Croissants in perfect rows, cookies color-coordinated. It looked impressive, but it disrupted the cozy chaos that had been our charm. One busy Saturday, a tourist family came in, kids excited over the sweets. The youngest, a boy about Emily's age, accidentally knocked over a jar of sprinkles. Chaos ensued, colorful dots everywhere. Sarah's face paled. She rushed over, apologizing profusely while sweeping up, her movements frantic. "It's fine, really," I assured the parents, but Sarah muttered under her breath about carelessness. Later, she lectured Emily, who wasn't even involved. "See why we must be mindful. Accidents lead to messes." Emily nodded solemnly, but her spark dimmed. Another new dialogue, heavy scene, a family game night we attempted to foster bonding. We pulled out board games from the closet. Monopoly, the classic. David dealt properties with enthusiasm, Emily giggling as she landed on boardwalk. Sarah, however, turned it competitive. No, Emily, think strategically. Don't buy that if it's not a set. Her instructions came rapid fire, turning fun into a lesson. When Emily lost a turn, Sarah sighed. Next time, pay attention. I suggested switching to something lighter, like charades. Sarah obliged, but even then, she corrected poses straighter back, clearer gestures. David laughed it off, lighten up, hon. But Emily withdrew early, claiming tiredness. Alone with her tucking in, she confided Mom makes games feel like tests. I hugged her. Games are for joy, love. We'll play our way next time. To deepen emotional layers, recall a heartfelt talk with David before the big revelations. One evening, after closing, we sat on the balcony overlooking the twinkling city lights. Waves crashed below, a soothing rhythm. David, I've noticed things with Sarah and Emily. I started gently. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Mom, she's been through hell with Michael's death. Cut her slack. But the control, it's scaring Emily. He paused, then shared. She told me once about her childhood, rough patches in foster care after her parents split. Makes sense, she's protective. I nodded, but urged protection shouldn't feel like a cage. He promised to talk to her, but days later, nothing changed. Building suspense with more examples of Sarah's subtle manipulations. She started a gratitude journal for the family, insisting we each write daily entries. Mine thankful for the bakery's success. Emily's grateful for Mom's guidance. But when Emily wrote about loving Grandma's stories, Sarah suggested revising add how Mom helps too. It felt forced, erasing authenticity. Another incident, Emily's birthday party at the park. Sarah planned meticulously, invites, themed decorations, even vetted guest list. But during, she hovered, directing games, correcting laughter if too loud. When a child spilled punch on Emily's dress, Sarah whisked her away to change, emerging with a lecture on clumsiness. Emily's smiles faded. Party over, she whispered to me, I just wanted to play free. These additions paint a fuller picture, showing the gradual erosion of freedom, making the climax more impactful without repetition. The theme of hidden pain behind control remains, message of empathy and timely intervention intact. Tone conversational and emotional. I picked up the thread right where the shadows of that fractured family night still hung heavy in the air. The bakery's warm lights flickering like uncertain promises against the dark Miami shoreline. Emily's small hand slipped into mine as we walked back from the beach that evening. Her sandals leaving tiny prints in the damp sand that the waves would soon erase. She hadn't asked about her mother again since the sugar dusting lesson. But I could feel the question simmering beneath her silence, the way dough rises quietly under a cloth before it's ready to be shaped. The next morning, I woke before the gulls, the apartment above seaside delights still cloaked in pre-dawn gray. David was already downstairs, the low rumble of the industrial mixer a familiar heartbeat. I pulled on my apron. Faded blue with a burn mark near the hem from a long-ago mishap with a tray of eclairs, and padded down the creaky stairs. He looked up when I entered, flour dusting his forearms like morning frost. Couldn't sleep either, I asked, tying my hair back. He shook his head. Every time I close my eyes, I see her on that beach, holding Emily like she was the only thing keeping her from drowning. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached for the rye flour, measuring it by feel the way my mother had taught me decades ago. The silence between us wasn't hostile, but it carried weight, years of shared grief, now layered with this new jagged wound. David, I said finally, my voice low. We can't keep pretending this is just a rough patch. Emily's nightmares. She wakes up crying for Sarah, then remembers and cries harder because she's afraid to want her. He stopped mid, his hands still in the dough. The doctors say she's making progress. Real progress. They're trying a new therapy? Something about reparenting the inner child. He attempted a smile, but it cracked. Sounds like bakery talk. Reparenting. Like proofing bread that didn't rise right the first time. I snorted softly. Bread doesn't carry trauma, son. No. He admitted, but people do. We worked in tandem then, the rhythm of our movements a language older than words. I shaped loaves while he glazed the danishes, the scent of cardamom and orange zest filling the air. When the first tray went into the oven, I wiped my hands on a towel and turned to him. I'm going to Tampa today, I said. The nurse called again. Sarah's asking for Emily this time. David's shoulders stiffened. You think that's wise? No, I said honestly, but I think it's necessary. For all of us. He didn't argue. Maybe he was tired of arguing. Maybe he knew, deep down, that avoidance was just another form of control. The drive to the treatment center took me past mangrove tunnels and billboards advertising fresh citrus, the radio playing old jazz standards that made me think of my husband. How he'd hum along off key while steering our little boat through choppy waters. I arrived just as the sun crested the hills, painting the facility's white walls gold. The gardens were meticulous, hibiscus and bird of paradise blooming in defiant color against the sterile backdrop. A nurse, young, with kind eyes and a name tag reading, Marisol, met me in the lobby. She's in the art room, she said, leading me down a hallway that smelled faintly of acrylic paint and disinfectant. She's been painting a lot, says it helps her externalize. The art room was bright, windows overlooking a koi pond. Sarah sat at a long table, her back to me, a smock tied over hospital scrubs. Her hair was shorter now, cut practical, and she'd lost weight. Her collarbones sharp beneath the fabric. Canvases surrounded her, swirling storms of red and black, then softer blues bleeding into gold. One painting caught my eye. A child's silhouette reaching for a woman whose face was scratched out, the canvas torn in places as if clawed. Margaret? Sarah said without turning. Her voice was raspier than I remembered, like she'd been screaming in her sleep. You came. I pulled out the chair opposite her. Emily's outside with Marisol. She wanted to see the fish. Sarah's hand stilled on the paintbrush. She's taller. Kids do that, I said gently, even when we're not looking. Silence stretched, filled only by the soft gurgle of the pond filter. Finally, Sarah pushed a canvas toward me. It was Emily, unmistakably, standing in the bakery, flour on her cheeks, holding a crooked star-shaped cookie. But Sarah had painted herself in the background, a shadowy figure behind the oven, arms outstretched but never quite touching. I see her in my dreams, Sarah whispered, but I'm always too far away. Or my hands won't move. The doctors say it's guilt. I say it's punishment. I studied the painting. Punishment implies you believe you deserve it. Don't I? Her laugh was bitter. I took a life, Margaret. I took Emily's father from her. I took her childhood and twisted it into something she had to escape from. I took your son's trust and shattered it like that mirror. I reached across the table, hesitating before resting my hand near hers, not touching, but close. You took a lot, I said, but you're giving something back now. Every day you stay here, every painting, every session, you're giving Emily the space to remember you without fear. Sarah's eyes filled. She won't forgive me. Maybe not today, I said. But forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's 1,000 small ones. Like kneading dough. Fold, press, turn. Over and over until it's ready. Marisol appeared in the doorway then, Emily's small hand in hers. My granddaughter hesitated on the threshold, clutching a paper cup of fish food. Her eyes, David's eyes, darted between Sarah and me, uncertain. Sarah stood slowly, paint-stained fingers trembling. "Hi, baby." Emily took one step, then another. "You cut your hair. Do you like it?" "It's different." Emily's voice was small but steady. "Grandma said you're learning to be happy." Sarah knelt, bringing herself to Emily's level. "I'm trying. It's hard. Like when you tried to ride your bike without training wheels and kept falling." Emily considered this. "I cried a lot, but you got back on," Sarah said. "Every time." Emily nodded slowly. Then, in a move that undid us both, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Sarah's neck. Sarah froze, then folded her daughter into a hug so careful it looked like she was handling spun sugar. I saw the moment Emily relaxed, the way her shoulders dropped, the way she buried her face in Sarah's shoulder and breathed her in, like scenting home after a long absence. Marisol caught my eye and nodded toward the door. I followed her out, giving them space. In the hallway, she handed me a folder. "Her therapist thought you should see this." Inside was a series of drawings. Emily's, from her own sessions. The first a stick, figure family. Sarah with angry red scribbles over her face. The middle one's Sarah smaller, in the corner, while Emily and I held hands with David. The latest, all four of us at the bakery counter, Sarah's figure normal-sized, holding a tray of cookies. Emily had written in careful block letters, kamas hama samadei. I closed the folder, my throat tight. Back in Miami that evening, the bakery was closed, but the oven still radiated warmth. David was experimenting with a new sourdough starter. His therapy, he called it. Emily sat on a stool, swinging her legs, watching yeast bubbles form like tiny planets. Mom hugged me, she announced when I walked in. She smelled like paint. David looked up, hope flickering. "Yeah." Emily nodded. She said she's learning to be a better mom, like how you're learning to make bread without burning it. "Daddy," he laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Fair enough. I hung up my keys and rolled up my sleeves. "Well, if we're all learning, let's start with dinner. Emily, you pick, pasta or tacos." "Tacos!" she declared, with extra cheese. Mom said cheese is okay sometimes now. David and I exchanged a look, progress in small, cheesy bites. Later, after Emily was asleep, her new stuffed dolphin tucked under her chin, I found David on the balcony, staring at the moonlit ocean. I handed him a mug of chamomile tea. She asked if Sarah could come for her birthday. He said quietly, "It's in 3 months." I leaned against the railing. "What did you tell her?" "That we'd talk to the doctors. That birthdays are for wishes, and sometimes wishes take time." I sipped my tea. "You know, when your father died, I thought I'd never bake again. The ovens felt like graves. But one morning, I woke up and the dough was there, waiting. Grief doesn't erase the recipe, it just changes the rising time." David was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I still love her, Mom, even after everything." "I know," I said. "Love isn't a light switch. It's more like proofing. Sometimes it needs warmth, sometimes darkness. But it keeps growing if you tend it right." He nodded, eyes on the horizon where the sea met the sky in a line that shifted with every wave. The next few months unfolded like a slow rise loaf. Sarah's visits became supervised, then semi-supervised, each one a careful kneading of trust. She brought Emily paints and canvases, and they'd sit at the bakery's back table after closing, creating messy masterpieces while David and I cleaned up. Sarah's hands still shook sometimes, but less with each visit. She started helping with inventory, her architect's eye perfect for redesigning the display cases. and the regulars took to her again, cautiously at first, then with the easy warmth of old friends. One Saturday, Emily's birthday dawned bright and humid. We'd planned a small party, just us, a few school friends, and Sarah, who'd been granted a day pass. The bakery was transformed. Streamers in Emily's favorite teal, a cake I'd baked at midnight. Chocolate with strawberry filling, because compromise is its own kind of love. Sarah arrived with a gift wrapped in newspaper comics, her idea of recycling. Emily tore it open to reveal a hand-painted wooden sign. I siehst du deleichtes, belechley verwai die ss start. Sarah had carved it herself in woodshop therapy. Emily's eyes shone. For the front door. If your grandma approves, Sarah said, glancing at me. I pretended to consider. Well, it's not centered perfectly, but perfection's overrated. The party was chaos in the best way. Kids smeared with frosting, David attempting a pie-ata with a broom handle, Sarah laughing so hard she snorted when Emily smashed cake into his beard. Later, as the sun dipped low, Sarah pulled me aside by the ovens. I got the job, she said, voice steady. Part-time drafting for a firm in Coral Gables. They know about everything. Said they admire second chances. I hugged her. Really hugged her. For the first time since the nightmare began. She smelled like sawdust and hope. That night, after the last guest left and Emily was asleep amid wrapping paper drifts, David, Sarah, and I sat on the balcony with slices of leftover cake. The ocean murmured its eternal lullaby. 2 fresh starts. David toasted with a plastic fork. Sarah clinked her water glass against it. And to family that rises, even when it's been punched down. I looked at them. My son with flowers still in his hair. My daughter-in-law with paint under her nails, and felt the weight of all we'd survived settle into something bearable. Not fixed, not perfect, but proofed, shaped, and finally ready to bake. The next morning, the new sign hung slightly crooked above the bakery door, catching the sunrise just right. Customers smiled at it, at us, at the little girl who now danced between the tables with a tray of misshapen cookies, declaring them abstract art. Sarah took orders with a genuine grin, David hummed off, key jazz, and I kneaded dough with hands that no longer trembled. Life, I've learned, is less like a perfect souffle and more like sourdough. It takes time. It takes tending. Sometimes it sinks in the middle and you have to start over. But if you keep feeding it love, truth, the courage to rise again, it becomes something nourishing, something that sustains. And in the quiet moments, when the ovens hum and the sea whispers, I think of Michael, of storms long past, of a woman who fell and learned to stand. I think of Emily, who will grow up knowing that mothers can be storms and safe harbors both. And I think of us, scarred, imperfect, but still here, still baking, because some things like bread, like family, are worth the long rise.